This is Barry Zalma speaking for Zalma on Insurance on YouTube. I am an attorney who has retired from the practice of law and now spend my time acting as an insurance claims consultant, insurance claims expert, bad faith claims expert, and author and creator of these videos. Everybody who interviews anybody understands that hopefully they will be telling the truth. Unfortunately, there are situations where memory is mutable and where it is necessary to understand the fact that memory is mutable. When taking an examination under oath, for example, the person being interviewed is given an oath to speak the truth under penalty of perjury. However, we also understand that very few people have a perfect eidetic or photographic memory. Memory is a fluid and often unreliable function. During my time as a trainee investigator at the Army Intelligence School at Fort Holabird, Maryland, a classroom lecture on interviewing was interrupted by a man dressed in a clown mask, a tuxedo, swim fins, a cowboy hat, and a purple cummerbund. He ran into the room, screamed epithets, fired a weapon into the ceiling, and ran out. The teacher instructed each member of the class to write down a description of the intruder. None of our descriptions were accurate, and we were all shocked when the shooter was brought back into the class. The noise he made, the firing of a weapon, and the fear the incident engendered made it almost impossible to recall him accurately. Some even described him as having been female. The professional interviewer recognizes that some examination under oath techniques can cause honest subjects, those who are innocent but just trying to be helpful, to misremember and provide unreliable, even false information. In fact, it has long been known that false memories can be implanted by a process of suggestion, especially when used by skillful but unscrupulous attorneys or interviewers. Leading questions, where a desired answer is suggested by the way the question is phrased, are a dangerous impediment to fact-finding. The true professional, impartial and seeking only the truth, must guard against even inadvertently leading a subject to creating false memories. Evidence shows that the use of a suggestive interrogation technique can be material to the preparation of defense, and the courts have recognized that suggestive interrogation techniques are material to the credibility of prosecution witnesses. In a case called United States versus Noel, for example, a police officer who lies to a suspect may, however, find that the results of the interrogation accepted as following from a reasonable interrogation technique. An Ohio court in a case called State versus Hatcher was faced with an officer who explained his interrogation technique this way, quote, "Well, if you have certain facts that you believe that a suspect has committed, say they've done one thing, if you make it seem like the accuser is making it more, then it's easier for that person to say, 'Oh, no, I didn't do that, but all I did was this. It's just a technique we're trained to do.'" The court concluded, quote, "Thus, regardless of the court's view of the use of lies by detectives as an interrogation technique during the course of questioning a defendant, We cannot find this factor alone supports a finding that the defendant's confession was involuntary." Close quote. However, in a subsequent dissent, the court's decision was criticized as follows, quote, "We simply should not sanction this technique. The jury which heard the case was rightly concerned about the police conduct in this case. This technique is within the purview of our deliberation as an appellate court. Indeed, most courts, including many cited by the majority, have consistently disapproved of this technique as producing untrustworthy statements. Significantly, this court unequivocally did so in a case called State versus Johnston, where the majority referenced but fails to apply. We should clearly and consistently express ourselves about this technique and refuse to reward its use. Since the majority of the panel does not take that step, I respectfully dissent." Close quote. So every court doesn't agree with the techniques used by interrogators and interviewers. And one of the reasons is because memories can be implanted. False testimony can be suggested that really wasn't true, and where even the person giving the testimony believed it to be true. For instance, in a psychotherapeutic setting, when hypnotized subjects are regressed to a past life and are given suggestions that they were abused in their past life, many subsequently remember the suggested abuse and regard it thereafter as a fact. The phenomenon is not limited to the context of hypnosis or police interrogations. One of the best known examples of a false memory is found in the autobiography of developmental psychologist Jean Piaget. Dr. Piaget wrote that a kidnapping had been attempted on him when he was only 2 years old. He remembered copious details concerning the incident. Years later, however, the nurse who had reported the kidnapping attempt admitted that she made the entire story up to avoid being fired and to gain the good graces, even the gratitude of the Piaget family. As a child, Dr. Piaget had heard the story repeated so many times that he could not differentiate between his own memories and the false imparted narratives that overtook his recollection. He would describe with utter conviction the assailants, the clothes he was wearing, how he was pulled by the kidnappers from his carriage, and the pain he experienced. He recalled all these details as if they were real memories, and being the memories of an educated and rational man, a professional psychologist, in fact, they remained unquestionably true, but they were proven to be totally and entirely false. Children's cognitive abilities do not merely increase quantitatively. They go through stages that are recognized as being qualitatively different from one to the next. Childhood cognition and memory is fundamentally distinct from adult thought and recall. Most research confirms that the development of accurate recall skills occurs between ages 5 and 10. While younger children can be said to have memories, their linguistic ability to articulate them to others causes such images to disappear soon after formation. When a parent or other adult later relates their version of the presumably shared memory, the child literally incorporates the story into his or her own inchoate version of it.
Another example of compromised memory is the victim who misidentifies a suspect due to an unduly orchestrated police lineup. The fact that humans are prone to having memories implanted this way has resulted in leading questions being ruled inadmissible in courtroom proceedings. Prospective jurors are often grilled as to their existing knowledge, usually gleaned from the mass media, of the case to be tried. During trials, jurors are sequestered. They're cut off from news sources and not allowed to discuss the case outside the courtroom. Such steps are taken because we know that the ability in adults to accurately remember events can be tainted to the point that their testimony is deemed too unreliable to be admitted without offense to due process. Some jurisdictions, including New Jersey, have even allowed trial courts to conduct taint hearings in cases where the defendant can produce some evidence that a child victim's accusations are the product of suggestive or coercive interrogation techniques. Under New Jersey law, once the defendant establishes sufficient evidence of unreliability, the burden shifts to the state to prove by clear and convincing evidence that the child's statements are reliable. Courts, in fact, are beginning to accept the existence of what is called the false memory syndrome. In Milton's Paradise Lost, Satan takes on the appearance of an angel and convinces an archangel entrusted with guarding creation to guide him to the Garden of Eden. There Satan further deceives Adam and Eve and causes the fall of humanity. John Milton used this biblical example of deceit to illuminate the human condition. The professional interviewer, no matter how experienced, should resist the temptation to believe he or she is a human lie detector. False memories are all too easy to implant, and in their vivid imagery and wealth of detail, they can be indistinguishable from true recollections. Indeed, these memories are experienced as entirely real by those who possess them, and even after their unreliability has been exposed, they function to mask or even have perhaps entirely replaced any original or true memory. The professional must recognize that any method of lie detection, including his or her own techniques, require complete corroboration. Sincerity is what makes the self-deceived deceiver so convincing. The name for this phenomenon is the false memory syndrome, the belief that it is possible for one to remember in great detail events, especially traumatic ones, that did not actually occur. Some people believe that the memory is like a computer hard drive that records every event accurately and keeps it intact. Research on memory has debunked that myth and raised many questions about remembering and forgetting. Memories are malleable. They change incrementally each time we recall past events. With the passage of time, with direction or motivation, with the introduction of interfering facts, memory is inexorably transformed. When conducting an interview, the professional must be careful not to provide the subject with a trigger that will unconsciously transform his or her memory of an event to fit the interviewer's needs. Much remains to be learned about human memory, especially about how both traumatic and non-traumatic memories are preserved. It has been shown that some of our memories can become unavailable to us. Furthermore, when such memories are seemingly rediscovered or uncovered, they can often be shown to be contaminated mixtures of both
accurate and inaccurate information. Because of the reconstructive nature of memory, some memories may be distorted through influences such as incorporation of new information, a factor which a professional interviewer must always take into consideration. In fact, some memories can be created by the interviewer without even considering that it is being attempted. The problem of tainted memory is much more evident in young children, but the risk continues with adults. Some people, although not actually cunning or intentional liars, are simply unable to tell the truth. The condition known as confabulation is a memory disturbance characterized by verbal statements inaccurately representing memory, background, or present situations. Confabulation is sometimes considered honest lying and is distinct from deliberate lying because there is typically no intent to deceive. The individual is unaware that the information is false. Individuals who confabulate are generally very confident about their recollections, despite evidence contradicting its truthfulness. The best known causes of confabulation are usually traumatic acquired brain damage and psychiatric or psychological disorders. The professional interviewer must hone his or her ability to recognize a confabulator, a person who, clinically speaking, cannot tell the truth, because the confabulator, judging by tests and all other indications, appears to be a truthful person. Usually, confabulation does not benefit the confabulator. He or she is motivated by nothing other than the desire to relate his or her thoughts and experiences. Confabulations, although not true, are not lies. They are the product of a psychological problem that must be understood by the interviewer before drawing any conclusions about the degree of truthfulness in the subject. Even Sigmund Freud, the famous psychiatrist, was subject to false beliefs. Freud learned that he had inadvertently taken credit for an idea of a colleague's that the latter had shared with him several years earlier. He wrote to a colleague excitedly to tell him about his new theory of original bisexuality, and was crestfallen to be reminded that the colleague himself had actually first articulated the theory during an evening walk they had taken together in Breslau years earlier. The phenomenon of suppressing memories that do not serve our purposes or reflect well on ourselves is not discreetly referred to as cryptomnesia. It occurs when a forgotten memory returns without it being recognized as a memory. The person believes it is something new and original. It is a memory bias whereby a person may falsely recall generating a thought, an idea, a song, or a joke. The person is not lying and not deliberately engaging in plagiarism, but rather experiencing a memory as if it were a new inspiration. Thus, the most professional of professional interviewers, the father of modern psychoanalysis, found he had created a false memory. He learned and taught that the interviewer must assume any person can create a false memory without the least intention of lying. If you are interested in developing your experience as an interviewer, as a lawyer or insurance claims person, or simply as a normal human being needing to obtain information from another, you may find of use my book, The Examination Under Oath, which is available
at Amazon.com as both a paperback or a Kindle book. You can also learn about it from the details provided in the insurance claims library, which can be reached from my website, www.zelma.com. Thank you again for your attention.